Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second session of Literary Matters. I'm Dr. Sohana Manzoor, Literary Editor of the Daily Star. I'm also an Associate Professor of English, University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. The aim of our program is to bring in up-and-coming academics, scholars, writers who are rigorously working away in their respective fields and thus contributing to the society at different levels. Today we have with us Dr. Mohammad Shafiqul Islam, who's a professor of English, Shahjalal University of Science and Technology, and Mohammad Mosiur Rahman, Senior Lecturer, Department of English and Humanities, University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. Poet, academic, and translator, Dr. Shafiqul Islam's research interests include post-colonialism, world literature, translation studies, and South Asian literature. Other than scholarly work in literature, he is committed to creative writing, especially poetry and literary translation. Dr. Islam is the author of 2 poetry collections, most recently Inner State, and the translator is also the translator of Humayun Ahmed, selected short stories, and aphorisms of Humayun Azad. His research articles, poetry and translation, have appeared in renowned journals at home and abroad. His work has been anthologized in a number of books, such as The Book of Dhaka, a city in short fiction, The Best Asian Poetry, Qazi Nazrul Islam Selections, When the Mango Tree Blossomed, and Poems from the Sark region. Mohammad Mosiur Rahman is currently teaching at ULAB. He's also a PhD fellow at the School of Languages, Literacies and Translation, University of Science, Malaysia. He has more than 7 years of research experience in social linguistics and TESOL, as well as 4 years of postgraduate teaching and supervision. Mosiur Rahman has published extensively, even though he is very young, in journals indexed by Scopus and Web of Science in the fields of sociolinguistics and TESOL. His work has been published with prestigious international publishers, including Cambridge University Press, Springer Nature, and Taylor and Francis Routledge. He was one of 2 recipients of the University of Science Malaysia Vice Chancellor's Award in 2019, the university's highest honor for any PhD student. So today, as I looked at your profiles, actually, more than anything, I was taken in by the variety of work both of you have done. So at this point, I would say that can you tell us a little bit about your career as writer, scholar, teacher, poet, translator, because you do a lot of things. What made you choose the path that led you where you are today? And perhaps you could share some of your stories with our audience here.
Okay.
So maybe
so you can go first.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, first of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Daily Star for arranging this wonderful program. I'm sorry that I have got some cold, so the sound will not be clear sometimes. So bear with me, please. So the Daily Star actually deserves praise for this wonderful endeavor. And I particularly thank Dr. Suhana for this warm introduction. As far as the question is concerned, personally, I work in 3 areas: writing poetry in English, then doing research in the areas of my interest, and then translating from Bangla into English. Doing research is basically connected to my belonging to academia. Earlier, I thought, as far as the surroundings are concerned, that publication of research work is related to only career orienting. More specifically, as it happens in the universities, that people get promotion through the publications, etc. But as I started carrying out research more seriously and with more interest, I found it really interesting. And though it is an arduous task, no doubt, but publication of my research work is in indexed and international renowned journals gave me a boost to work. in the areas of my interest more devotedly. Moreover, reading international standard research articles is my habit, and it's also a pleasure to read different articles in various renowned journals. Nowadays, I'm conducting research out of my pleasure and interests, and be familiar with new approaches to establish theories and to reflect on new theoretical interventions and the symbiotic analysis of texts with the approaches and theories. But nowadays, I find it worth doing. Studying literature itself is a matter of happiness for me, and so is carrying out research. Without thinking of any material gain, I say this as good and standard publications in our country are yet to have institutional recognition and also attention. I love to carry out research in the areas of post-colonialism, world literature, translation studies, and also South Asian literature. As for poetry, the genre is my favorite. And since my study of English literature at the university, I have been fond of poetry more than any other genres. And poetry appeals to me like a flower appeals to bee. In my school and college life, I also had a natural inclination toward poetry. So out of my deep love for poetry and reading both Bengali and English poems widely, I dreamt of writing poetry, and that's in English. So choosing English as a medium of writing is just the comfortability, nothing more. And I think now it's the age of Englishes, not English, because this question arises most of the time that why write in English? So English is no more the sole resource of the British now, and it's also the language of everyone around the globe. I wrote some poems at the university life, some of which I submitted here and there. When two of my poems appeared in an international poetry magazine, I felt excited and also inspired. And since then, I continued writing poetry and still write at my convenience and upon the mood that is congenial for poetry. Along with my research work, I have also published my poems in various international journals, magazines, and anthologies. So that's how I belong to poetry, or vice versa. And literary translation is another area I also work on. I'm a practicing translator, rendering Bengali pieces into English. And although translation is a very difficult task and challenging too, I attempt to do it because I also love to make our literature available in another language so that it reaches out to some more audience. Literary translation is now a necessity, no doubt, and this the whole world recognizes. Although it had come a long way to reach this position, Bengali literature deserves more translation and merits more international readership. So basically, my venture in these three areas go on this way. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your detailed, that's quite a lot of information, and that's very detailed. So Mosiur, maybe you can also pick it up
Yes.
from here.
Yep. Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Daily Star and Daily Star Literature, and also Dr. Sohana ma'am for initiating this. And it was enthralling to listen to Dr. Shafiq sir. And I'm really glad that I could be a part of this particular episode because he is one of the rare academics who, in the field of literature and translation studies in this country, who takes research seriously and publishes in international journals. So on different issues, hopefully we'll be on the same page today, and we can have a very good, fruitful discussion. All right. So for me, it was kind of a coincidence that I actually joined academia. Firstly, I had no plan whatsoever. In 2014, I was attending my postgrad coursework in North South University, and I was planning to go abroad. But at that time, I had no plan, no intention whatsoever in research and joining academia. Uh, but as I was saying, it was a coincidence because when I was planning to go and study in Malaysia, I had different options. I could go for coursework. I could go for mixed mode masters and also research-based masters. So I went for research-based masters just for one reason. That was I had to fund myself. And if you go for research-based masters, what happens? You have to pay less, almost half of the tuition fees if you compare with course-based masters. So I actually went for research-based masters for that. Uh, then it started there. Then I started. It was very difficult at the beginning. Because I just finished my master's coursework here, and as you know, writing is a different genre altogether. Writing for research publication, writing for thesis or dissertation, it's a different thing altogether. And I had no experience whatsoever when I was here, so I had to pick up. I have to pick up. I have to start from scratch. For everything. And then this particular passion for reading, and writing and publishing started. So my field where I work, where I'm comfortable, it's sociolinguistics and TESOL. Mostly I work in these two broad umbrella. And I actually talk about language policy. I mean, more specifically, if I have to discuss, and also language teaching. So these two areas specifically I work on. Now, when I started, I can remember at the time it was in 2015. At the time, we hardly actually could find people who actually published in this particular area. These are both of the areas, sociolinguistics and also TESOL. But other than Dr. 𝐿𝐻𝐿, who actually I'm inspired a lot. I mean, by him, the work he conducts, the type of research he conducts, and also publication. But as I was saying earlier, that publication gives you motivation. The more you publish, you get motivated every time. All right. So my first major work when I sent to a journal published by Cambridge University Press, I always considered that as a very important milestone in my career. Actually, it actually got me all the recognition that I needed at that time, and just to get myself going, get myself motivated. So that particular piece of paper I sent in 2016 when I was around 25 years old. And it was kind of, as I was saying, I just I followed 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 very closely, Dr. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 very closely. The paper, wherever he said, I used to send my papers there. So, and rejections after rejections after rejections. So it's a part and parcel of our academic journey. I also learned so many things, how to deal with editors, how to deal with reviewers when you write. The problem with writers, sir also will vouch this. When we write, we always write with passion, and we believe this particular work has no flaw whatsoever. And when it goes to reviewers, they understand, and then editors, when they edit, they actually come up with so many things you have to address. So after rounds of reviews, 2 or 3, my paper got published, and in 2018 that particular paper published, and then I didn't have to look back. I used to get calls to give lectures. I used to get calls just to conduct workshops, and also I had several offers from Bangladesh universities to join academia, and that particular paper actually clicked for me. As I was saying, it's a very important milestone in my career. I always, once in a while, I always share this paper. just to kind of, it's a celebration for me, that particular paper. And then again, from there, actually, I started my career, and I was very serious that this is a particular field where I can contribute, where I can work, and it gives me comfort. Yes, every researcher's journey is different, and we have to sacrifice a lot whenever I mean, we have to focus on something, you have to leave something else, huh? Right? So you cannot hold everything together. So, but again, that is where the entire thing, the motivation actually came. Thank you. I'll add later.
Yeah, thank you, Mosiur. That's a very interesting story. I mean, the way when you said that, your reply was very candid when you said that you went for research because it meant paying less. But I mean, from there, I mean, I know that you are very much into research, and you have published at some very good places, very early, and that is really amazing. So coming to that, since we are talking about problems with research when you write papers, reviewers, going to the reviewers, but even before that, I mean, what role, if any, do you think writers and scholars, teachers should play in the community of the public spheres? I mean, researchers, we sometimes say that they live in the ivory tower, but don't they have any responsibility to weigh in or social issues or current concerns? Or do you think that should there be some separation between the literary or academic world and the ordinary everyday world? Because I know both of you are very much into research. So how do you look at this issue? Like even today, I was looking at Facebook and came across this interesting discussion that that research is not connected to everyday life. So how do you look at it?
Yeah, I think I can talk about this. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think scholars and university teachers, their first and foremost duty is to carry out research and then teach. But I think personally that they are not, and they should not be separated from, I mean, research work and research activities. This is their part of everyday life. Like, I mean, they should not be separated from the society. They are not aloof from the society. So researchers and scholars, they can also engage themselves in social activities, and particularly carrying out research. It happens for various reasons, but particularly it happens when the researcher has to create something new in their area of in their area of knowledge, and then they can also add something to the existing knowledge. So but scholars and researchers and also writers, they can also play their roles in their communities or societies, besides writing and also discharging academic activities and responsibilities. But it is also important to note that, as I have already mentioned, that a scholar has to contribute widely to the progress of the nation and also the world by disseminating knowledge and also creating new knowledge. And similarly, writers primarily write, and they write for their readers. But it is arguable if writers write only to change society or mindset of people, or they should write to make people morally strong. But the key purpose of literary writing should be, I think, it's my personal belief, to please readers and also to attempt to exert an impact on the reader's mind. And activism, particularly for social and national and even global issues, along with professional responsibilities, is of course praiseworthy. And the scholars and also researchers and writers, they should come forward for humanitarian activities. In this connection, teachers particularly as the question arises about the scholars. So they can also engage in various social and cultural movements, and also the humanitarian activities. And that is what writers and academics and also poets have been doing, I believe. Uh, if I give an example in our history, if we look back to the 1952 language movement and also the 1971 liberation war of Bangladesh, we can also find several writers and academics who actively participated in the movement and also in the war. Many of them have also had also sacrificed their lives for the country. So besides in other critical moments of the nation, they also took to the streets and they protested incongruities, injustice, and violence. So during climatic events, I can give the recent example in Sylhet, and also in different events like cyclones, writers and scholars also work hard to help common people. And if I give an example of the recent devastating flood in Sylhet and Sunamganj and some other areas, many teachers of university, even particularly in our university, they have gone to remote areas and they risked their even lives. And they reached out to flood affected people and they tried to help them with food, clothes, and also money. So it should also be mentioned that several teachers couldn't go physically, but they helped them in different ways, particularly financially. And they tried to redress the suffering of the victims in those remote areas. So basically, majority of scholars and writers engage themselves in social and humanitarian activities in one way or another. There is a little scope for scholars and writers, I believe, it is my personal belief, to remain indifferent during national crisis and also natural calamities. So I don't think that scholarship and writing, literary activism, and such activities are, and even working in academia, they should be separated from the everyday work. So this is my personal belief, actually. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What can you? Yes.
Almost, I have the similar view that Dr. Shafiq has mentioned. Well, intellectual activism, or being a public intellectual and being an academic, are two different identities. I have no problem if someone can justify to these two identities, and I mean they can go simultaneously. I have no problem with it. You can carry both identities. I have no problem. Meaning that they can be an academic, at the same time can be vocal about social issues. But I'll prefer myself to restrict to academia. I'm not sort of person who will go out and be vocal about rights. Rather, I'll prefer to inculcate those ideologies to in my students, and can disseminate my worldview through my students, through my teaching and my research. If I can contribute in this society, I'll rather prefer that. I mean, this is how I can bring qualitative changes in this society. I believe that, and also I often hear people people referring to Noam Chomsky. This is an example people take out of the proportion, because in the first place. Why? He is an exceptional individual, and exception should not be an example in every context. This is the first thing. Now, and the second thing is, more pressing issue here is people want to put forward his second part of life. I mean, the activism that he did. All right, but public activism to justify the activism that we have here in this country. I afraid we often forget his important contribution in modern linguistics and his first part of his professional career, which is, I mean, being a linguist. He is often termed as the modern father figure of modern linguistics. Now, what I always tell people, I mean, has become Noam Chomsky. the linguist, then become a একটু আগে ওটা হওয়ার পরে then you can go for that. All these things you can go. But professionally, you have to achieve something that will take you there. Oh, his contribution in modern English. If someone can do justice,
right. I think probably we are having a bit of.
Hello.
Okay, I think we are having a bit of internet connectivity problem. Is it on my end or?
Am I clear now?
All right. So, yes.
Can you, am I audible?
Yes, yes. I'm not sure who is having a bit of an internet problem, if it is me or you, but I think we are kind of losing things here.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. So.
Oh.
Should I continue, ma'am? Am I audible?
I think yes, I can hear you, but I think you are dropping in and out. So I'm not sure if it is my internet or yours. But all right. Yes. Let's then move on to the next issue that we are addressing. Since we've been talking quite a bit about research, and you are both, like I said, that have done your parts of extensive research. But what I would like to focus on, and also we are also I think running short of time. But I would like to focus on the problems of researchers in Bangladesh, because as an academic myself, I know that it's extremely difficult to get hold of scholarly articles, books, especially recently published stuff, and especially if you're looking for something outside of Bangladesh. So how do you guys handle it? I mean, how do you keep on working with things? And I think that is one question many of our audience would like to have an answer. Like, how do you deal with it?
It's to me.
So you can go first.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's an acute crisis for the scholars and researchers in Bangladesh, and it is inarguable that a lot of scholarly books and articles are required to carry out research. But unfortunately, whenever a researcher wants to work on a particular area, so at that time he or she falls in troubles because materials aren't available in the country. So when they do the literature review, they need to have access to some recent publications. But even the universities couldn't avail the opportunity for the scholars and researchers so that they can have access to those articles. So this is an unfortunate situation for the researchers in Bangladesh, and particularly Bangladeshi research. If we just compare other countries with Bangladesh in South Asia, Bangladeshi researchers face these problems more, and we don't have scholarly books and articles available around us. So I immensely feel that there should be access to ample resources for scholars, and all the universities, both public and private, so they may take steps to contact renowned publishers. This is my suggestion, actually, like Taylor and Francis, Brill, then Oxford Academic, Springer, Sayes, so that teachers and even the students, graduate students, they can avail relevant articles and other materials, books, whenever they need them. UGC, I think UGC can also play a great role in this respect. They can tell the universities, they can also emphasize on the fact that the universities should avail the material for the researchers. But amidst these challenges and also crisis, what I do, I personally try to have access to the published articles, recently published articles, contacted my friends who are living abroad. They are doing PhD in different universities. They have access to different renowned publications. And also I have some friends abroad. So they, whenever I need them, I just give them the, you know, I just tell them the requirement and they send me immediately some articles and even some books. And sometimes I also buy. And this way, actually, this is difficult, but we try to adjust with the situation. But it is true that in Bangladesh, the researchers and scholars are facing a lot of problems because of the lack of material, particularly renowned publications from various publishers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really a huge problem. So Mosiur, what do you do when it comes to you know, academic getting hold of you know, most current material, research material especially? How do you handle this situation?
Well, yeah, I have access to international journals. I'm privileged, one of the privileged readers from Bangladesh who have the access, has the access to
Right,
international
you are the
journals.
literary fellow. Yes, right. You are still a PhD fellow, so that makes a huge difference.
Yes, easier. But you see, the issue that has been raised by Dr. Shafiq sir is really valid. This is a pressing issue. You should have the access of it to international journals and also books as well. Huh? Although the places where I have worked in Bangladesh, both BRAC University as well as ULAB, they, I mean, have a very resourceful library, but that is not enough. That is not enough. If you want to go beyond, you have to subscribe. You have to take the. You have to buy the subscription of international publishers, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, Springer, and then Say's, Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, and there are so many. You need to have them. You need to have them because if you have to publish in international journals, your article, your writing has to be concurrent. It should have a currency. I mean, it should be recent. Huh? So you have to have the access to journals instead of books. Books are fine. That's very good. If you bring books, buy books, that's fine. But you need to have the subscription of journals. That's more important than anything else. And the other thing that you have asked to Shafiq sir was like the proficiency of our students. In fact, that is my field of study. I think, yes, we face it. In BRAC University, I faced it. In here, also in ULAB, we face it, and you know it as well. So, but what I do, these courses that we take, these are not language courses where we teach language. So, first thing that I ask my students to increase their reading. Once you become a good reader, automatically it will transform to your writing. You will become a good writer. All right. So these are connected. These are connected. So what I ask them throughout my entire semester, they have to read a lot. So I won't say that they actually develop their writing within 1 or 2 semesters that they do with me, but they have a start of reading. This particular advice that I've learned from my supervisor, who is an expert of literacy, academic literacy. So he asked me when I first went to Malaysia, my writing, I mean, you know, after finishing masters, to what extent we can go from here. So what he asked me to only read, so that I can develop the art of writing. It's not about grammar or using vocabulary. It's about structure of the writing. More to do with that. All right. So that's what I actually asked them. The problem actually lies. These are the symptoms that we have in university. These are not the problem. Real problem. Real problem is happening with the school students, where actually they are learning the language. That is where we have to look at. So I mean, for me, the socio-linguistic situation, then language policy, curriculum and assessment mismatch, and then teacher education. These are the things we need to fix first to get rid of this problem. Then we will not have these symptoms in universities. So that is where actually problem lies.
All right.
One thing
I was just wondering, like,
here,
since we've been talking about so much like widely published, and you are kind of saying that in spite of all the problems, I mean, especially you have been, publishing widely. So is there any secret to it? Or I would say that what would be your advice to the other scholars in the field, like how to go on publishing? Because one of the things that we deal with academics, like we say that publish or perish. Is that true? Or, how far is that true?
I wanted to say something, Mike.
I just wanted to add that, so even when I published an article in an international journal, so my students and also my friends sometimes want to read the article, but they do not have the access. They complain that it costs about $60 or $70 or something like that. So it's really very difficult for the students, graduate students, even the faculty members of the country to buy only one article against $60 or $70. So that's why institutional access is very important. And I think that the universities should immediately, in Bangladesh, all the universities should immediately take steps in this regard. And the next question, is it, will Mosiur answer it or I will start?
Yeah, you can both deal with it.
Mosiur can just respond to the questions, then I...
Sure.
Okay. All right. So publish and perish. I'm an advocate of this particular thing. I actually conducted so many workshops over the years with Bangladeshi and Malaysian academics on this particular issue. It's not about publishing and perishing from academia. No one will push someone out from this academia. No one will do that. But this is perhaps our own responsibility to publish. It has to come from inside. As I was saying earlier, regarding my humble beginning, I was discussing it. If you have a competitive context or culture in this country, which we have in Malaysia, Singapore, China, Japan, even in India, we have this competition. Right? You have to publish, you have to keep publishing, because why? It is important. We need to, our teaching should be research-informed teaching. So as a teacher, as an academic, this is our fundamental task to conduct research, because how then you will go and teach? You can be a very good teacher. I understand this teaching skill is different, but what I'm saying, it has to be research-informed. If you are a researcher as well, at the same time you're teaching, so in your teaching you can reflect your research as well. For example, the subject that I teach in my universities, in ULAB, there's the same thing I research. When I give examples, it becomes easier, and these are the real examples taken from the field, because I have conducted those research, those studies. So I can give better examples even. I can explain the topic better, just because the topic that I'm teaching, it's actually related to my research. So you have to go for it. Now, this culture, publish and perish, it is still not here. In Bangladesh, still we don't see it. But in other Asian countries, we have it already. However, let me tell you something. The universities that we have, public, irrespective of public and private, I distinguish universities based on good universities and bad universities. There are bad public universities, and there are outstanding great public universities. And there are good private universities and bad private universities. So we should distinguish based on this criteria, good or bad. Now, all good universities or prominent universities in the country, they actually started this without, because it is actually, if you have to push your ranking World University ranking in the world stage, if you have to compete, you have to publish. You have no other choice left. All right. So that these issues every year, whenever any ranking comes, what do we see? Our vice chancellors actually come up and say all these things. I mean, we understand what we actually read those statements every time in Daily Star, in all top newspapers. You don't have to do this if you make your staff, your academics, conduct research. You don't have to come up every time and say these things. We'll automatically do well in international ranking. Believe me, I have been to Malaysia in my last 7-8 years. I was there, and I know our academics. They are perfectly capable. All we have to give them a culture where they can actually conduct research. That should be enough. That should be enough. So publish and perish, it will be there, but not right now. I don't see any hint of this particular practice here in Bangladesh. But it will be there soon.
So, Dr. Shafiq, do you agree with what he says?
Yeah, I mean, what Mosiur has pointed out is absolutely right. Publish or perish, it is actually a slogan in the publication area, in the research area, particularly in the academia. But unfortunately, this is not yet believed or practiced in our country. Malaysia has already advanced. I mean, Mosiur has been studying. Some of my colleagues have also studied in Malaysia. I know that standard publication is celebrated there. A good publication is celebrated there. But those who are working in our country are doing it in isolation. There is no culture. Mosiur is absolutely right. I mean, culture hasn't developed. Culture of good research or culture of good publication. I mean, how difficult it is to write a paper, standard paper, and go through a submission process and then review process and then having feedback and finally to publish. And sometimes it takes 3 years. I mean, from submission to publication, sometimes it takes 3 years. And to respond to the reviewer's call, to respond to the reviewer's comments and suggestions, it's also an arduous task. And a researcher has to have enough patience. He has to work on that week after week, and even month after month. And if he loses patience, there will not be any good outcome at all. So that's why a researcher has to work devotedly, and he has to be given a very good environment, a peace of mind. Otherwise, and another important thing that is lacking in our country, it is a kind of acknowledgement and promotion from the institutions where they are working. So if it happens, the researchers will be inspired. The researchers will be more motivated to work more, and there will be a kind of competitive, I mean, healthy competition there will be among the researchers. But unfortunately, this is also missing among the universities in the country. And one thing that is to be inculcated in the minds of the researchers and even young graduates, that doing good research is now the demand of the time, and they should focus on that. Otherwise, when we talk about the ranking of the universities, when we talk about the universities in our country having no position in the world ranking at all, so ultimately then comes the question of research, good publications. So if we do not focus on that, it is late. Still, we have time now to work on that, to focus on that from the institution.
I think we have talked quite a bit about research, and I think it's become kind of heavy loaded now. So I would like to switch on to a lighter vein of discussion then. These days, like, if I think about my student days, or things were very different. Like, there was lots of lecture and stuff, but these days we see that the teaching style, material, everything is changing very fast. And if you look at it, like, there is this space for blogs, podcasts. There are lots of materials on YouTube. and there this Twitter, Instagrams, this social media is also taking up a lot of space. What is your take on it? I mean, what do you think? How do these things work? Are they positive or negative? How do you feel about these things in your classroom?
Should I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So I use social media or technology for two purposes: for my teaching as well as for my research. So what it does actually, while I teach, normally I use Moodle and I use blog, YouTube. I use that. These websites and also technology I use. For example, in literature review or statistical analysis, you don't need to go for manual review, or manually don't need to analyze statistical parts of your research paper. But you have softwares for that nowadays. So that's a very good thing. I mean, happened with us. Otherwise, you cannot be that productive. Even if, for example, for citation, I always encourage my students to use Mendeley. Mendeley is a very good website that which you can, a software which you can use for your referencing. So these things, yes, I use. But normally I use social media for the dissemination of my work, especially Facebook and ResearchGate. These two things, two websites I use to disseminate my work. And for teaching purpose, at ULAB I use Moodle and Google Classroom to upload my resources and everything, books and everything. So I always carry soft copies of my textbooks. So I normally share it on Moodle and as well as in Google Classroom. But these things, these are very helpful. One thing I'll mention, nowadays there is a vibe that you don't need teachers anymore. So you need these technologies. I have no opposition towards accepting any type of technology, but I also believe teachers cannot be replaced by those technologies. All right. So that's where I want to drag a boundary in between. All right. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, what Mosiur has said, I mean, it's right. I personally use different platforms, and that is for dissemination of my publications. Sometimes the students and even the friends, they know about the publications and they read the work and they give feedback. And it's also a kind of inspirations for many. I mean, and side by side, when I talk about technology, it's now the part of the overall education system, and particularly if we look back to COVID-19, even many were not familiar with different platforms, but they had to use it and under compulsion, and it was a necessity. And I think that technology and even these kinds of platforms are a necessity now to work with. And even as teachers, we sometimes send out different materials to the students, and even Facebook and Google Meet and all these kinds of platforms are used for teaching side by side, for sharing the material, for sharing the publications, etc. So I enjoy doing this. I mean, but too much engrossment in the social media, it's also harmful sometimes. But if someone uses it positively for dissemination of knowledge, publications, and also material, I mean, this is a wonderful way of dealing with this.
Okay, so I believe that we are kind of going a little slow, so I'm afraid I won't be able to address all the things that I wanted to. But I have one question for Dr. Islam, because I know that he has been translating extensively. So I was wondering, like, what are some of the challenges that you have faced and how have you navigated them, and also like what is your opinion of the culture of literary translation right now in the country?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah, literary translation is another area of my interest. As I said, even I carry out research in translation studies. And recently, I have also taken up a project that is interviewing the translators, and I have also published some of the interviews in great journals. So, as I have been in touch with literary translation, and I have also translated some book-length works as well. In the very beginning, I faced a lot of problems, as it happens to most of the translators. So, and just coming out of the university, during my university life, I also tried to translate one short fiction and another. But I attempted more seriously when I came out of the university. So during those days, I did read some uh, translations. So from those readings, actually, and side by side, um, knowing of the importance of translation, I also had an interest to translate some pieces. And during those days, this usually happens, as I have mentioned, that a lot of challenges one has to face. At that time, we just looked for equivalents or just transferring from one language to another. But as time went by, I started reading some great books of translations. Actually, from reading, as Mosiur has also pointed out earlier, that reading is the best way of learning. I mean, if one has to learn a particular thing, and he has to read the reliable sources, reliable materials of that particular area. So when nowadays what I do, I try to read standard translation works, and I try to learn from reading. So I sometimes read between the lines. I sometimes uh, spend some time on the word level, on the sentence level, and try to learn from there. And I try to also compare the original text and the translations. So as I have seen that some of my translations have also been published in um, the journals outside. So for example, Massachusetts Review has also published one of my translations. So as I work with one of the editors, translation editors of the journal, so I have also learned. I mean, this is also a learning process, that when you work with an established editor or a translator, you also learn from them. And even sometimes they make a query on the word level. So why this word? Why not that particular word? Why this structure? I mean, yeah, Bangladeshi translators face a lot of problems, but it is not difficult for the emerging translators if they are devoted, if they are serious. They have to read a lot of standard literary translation works. Only then they can feel confident and they can overcome some challenges. So that is what I can say. I have also faced a lot of problems. I'm still facing, but I'm learning every day. I'm trying to learn every day by reading. Yeah.
Okay, so we are almost to the end. So I was I'm just curious, like, what are some of the your most recent research or creative projects that you're working on, and how are things going? Yeah.
Oh, so currently I'm working on national language policy, focusing on English medium instruction, and also I'm working on a very important project, which will be on Polynesians, a variety that we have actually in Bangladesh. We need to establish it. Shafiq sir earlier was pointing out about this. I mean, the way people, authors in Bangladesh, the way they write, we have a distinctive variety. We should have a distinctive variety which has been unexplored in the context of Bangladesh. And I mean, yeah, that's what I'm planning. But as you know, being a part of this academia, we belong to this academia, we all, three of us, it's very difficult to execute, given that you have so much of workload at the same time. But I'm fortunate that my university where I work, they actually consider my interest, and I enjoy less numbers of courses I have to take. So that one factor I should mention. So hopefully I will be able to complete these projects, and also when I'll be done with the project, I'll be publishing it. And I'm focusing to other platforms as well. For example, I have been publishing in international journals. I will be focusing on book publication and also editing books in coming days. Thank you.
Okay, and good luck with your publishing and book projects. Shafiq, would you like to add anything?
Yes, yeah. I have been working on some research articles. Actually, I have presented some articles in international conferences, so I'm trying to work on them to make them publishable article. Side by side, currently I've just signed a contract with Routledge. It is a volume, I mean, critical volume on Jivanananda Das. So this is one of the current projects. Side by side, I have been interviewing, as I have mentioned, that some translators from our country. So I have also a plan to make it a book-length work in the near future. Side by side, my third collection of poetry. So the manuscript is almost ready. I will try to look for some publishers. I have already sent out the manuscript to some publishing houses. So, and journal. So when I start a new work and when I am commissioned to do some work, at the times feedback of the articles come up, and then I have to spend 1 month on that. So this is really difficult to handle all these things. But I'm trying my best to work on some research articles. And besides, some translation projects are also there. So lots of work I've been doing. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. I mean, sorry, because I think we have reached the end of our program because it's roughly a 1 hour, 60 minute slot. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm not sure if everything went fine. Like there was a bit of internet issues, I think, on all of our network. But then again, it's wonderful, and thank you for so much information. There's a lot to learn. Some of the things I knew, but I also learned about your work and everything. So with that, I bid all of you a very good night. And that is the end of our session today. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Shafiq Bhai, and thank you, Mosiur, for joining with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Sohanapa. Yeah, thank you, Mosiur, and it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you, sir. Same here.